Hello, wine friend, and welcome to episode 79 of the Wine Educate podcast. I am your host, Joanne Close, and I am so excited to record this cast. I've been looking forward to it all week. I do love doing these podcasts. It's great fun for me. And to talk about regions that I've not only been to, but spent quite a lot of time in is really fun. Last week we did the Languedoc, and that's where mom and dad live at Chateau Camplaisans. And today we're covering wines of the Roussillon. So the Roussillon is the region in between the Languedoc and essentially the border of Spain. It's the very southern part of France. People ask me when they come to visit Camplaisans for the wine trips or they're just doing independent travel, what's the best way to get to you? I'd say the number one way is to fly into Barcelona and either take the 2-hour train to Narbonne or rent a car and drive. We often do this. I will caution you that if you do take the train, you're going to probably need to spend the night in Barcelona because the train leaves early. But if you fly in, you can just go and hop in your rental car and drive on up the coast. It is a very pretty drive. And essentially, you're leaving Barcelona, you're hitting the French border pretty soon, and then you're driving through the town of Perpignan, which is the main center for the Roussillon area, and then on up to Narbonne. As long as you're not hitting any major traffic, about 2.5 hours. So the Roussillon, not only are we driving through this region quite a bit, we visit it quite a bit, especially with our groups. In particular, the very pretty town of Collioure. Collioure is where the Impressionists used to go. That whole region south of France, right? The light, and they go there to paint because it's very beautiful. And this town of Collioure, which is right on the Mediterranean, a little fishing village, is stunning. All the little houses painted different colors, a painter's dream, right? To go there and paint all these cute little houses. And also the home of anchovies. Anchovy is my absolute favorite food. And this year, when I go before the tours start, they have an anchovy festival. And this year, it just happens to fall on my birthday. So that is what I will be doing in early June of next year before the tours start. Let's talk all about the Roussillon. There's many things that make this region quite special. But before we start talking about grapes and wines, we need to talk about the identity of this region. It is both Catalan and Occitan. It has this sort of double identity. Historically, it was part of the Kingdom of Aragon, so Spanish, from the 12th century to the 17th century. It became part of France only in 1659 under the Treaty of the Pyrenees. So it has this duality to it. There are certain towns that identify as being Occitan, and there's other towns that identify as being strongly Catalan. And you see this reflected on the signs for the villages. They'll list both the Catalan and French. Despite this perceived duality, I think this is one of the nicest regions in France I have ever visited. The people here are extraordinarily kind, perhaps because they have this mindset of being outsiders, are tremendously welcoming to people from the outside as well. The winemakers in this region are just the kindest and have opened their cellar doors to us. I do have a big soft spot in my heart for the Roussillon. The landscape is unique. It is surrounded on 3 sides by mountain ranges, and on the 4th side, you have the Mediterranean. The word rugged is often used to describe the Roussillon. I kept reading it in all the books. Rugged gives me this sort of view of a cowboy and a horse with a cigarette roaming around in the hills. I think what they mean is that it does have this hilly, dry, scrubby, almost underpopulated feel. It is sparsely populated, this region. Mountain ranges surrounding it creates this amphitheater effect. It shields this region from rain, causing it to be very dry, and is one of the sunniest regions in France. On the lower plains, they grow all these gorgeous fruits, but really, when you get closer to the mountain ranges and more of the central valleys, you can only grow grapevines and olives. The winds are still here, okay? There's up to 8 named winds still knocking around in the Roussillon. Pretty windy, and the Tramontane and the Mistral are still contenders. Because of this wind, we have this low disease pressure, and indeed, today, about 20% of the vineyards practicing here are organic. Because of the wind and the heat, the vines are trained low to the ground in the gobelet or bush vine. Planting low to the ground protects them from the wind. It also helps to preserve moisture and the evaporation to retain as much moisture as they can. And the vines are spaced out so they don't compete for the water resources. Drought is an issue here, and with climate change, things are getting a little worse, so folks are experimenting with new things, planting on the north-facing slopes and things like that to help mitigate these issues. Another issue are the wild boar. Now, you find wild boar all over France, all over Europe, being very pesty. But here, they particularly thrive. I think it's because it's such an underpopulated region. And folks try to put up barriers, the electric fence. And I will tell you that the electric fence is not quite as effective as one may think. A while back, Mom and Dad used some electric fencing at Camp Lezens, and I don't know, I'm curious, so I touched it, and the zap wasn't too great. Probably not the wisest thing to do. I was curious. I was like, well, if that's not keeping me out, it's certainly not keeping some 300-pound boar out. The word for boar here is sanglier. So sanglier are a problem. They know when the grapes are ready. I've heard so many stories of winemakers that their grapes were ready to pick, and they said, we're going to pick this week, or we're picking tomorrow, and guess who beats them to it and eats the grapes? The sanglier. So, big problem. What are the soils like? Well, this is really fascinating to me. This region has some of the most diverse soil types in all of France. I notice this when I go there. The soil has this gorgeous red tint to it. So this is actually the iron-rich red clay. It's really beautiful, quite striking. But you find so many other types of soil. Schists, limestone, granite, sandstone, shale. I could go on and on. You get the point. There's lots of diversity of soil here. Elevation, well, you're surrounded by mountains on 3 sides. So when you move from the coast up into some of these foothills, the vines are planted up to elevations of about 600 meters, which is significant and creates different microclimates, different aspects. You get that cooling influence coming down from the mountains that can help mitigate the intense heat that's here. So lots of potential places for growing the grapes. Another really unique thing about the Roussillon are the wine styles that are produced here. This region is one of the rare examples of a region that produces both wines for still wines and fortified wines. Indeed, this region has a very strong history in making vin doux naturel, these fortified wines. Although it's been dramatically on the decline because it fell out of favor, the Roussillon still produces 80% of all of France's vin doux naturel. Indeed, the first 3 appellations that got their AOC here in the Roussillon are all famous for producing this style of wine. Banyuls, Maury, and Rive Salt. You can make white fortified wines and red. I think I need to do a whole other podcast episode on vin doux naturel. If you're interested, just hit reply to the newsletter and say, Joanne, I would like a podcast on that. What about the still wines? In 1971, Côte de Roussillon AOC was approved to make white, red, and rosé. Again, we need rosé. It's hot, okay? And then Côte de Roussillon Village AOC was also approved at that time for reds only. And now there are 5 recognized villages that can be included in this. The key reds. Grenache is the most planted for red wines at 23%, followed by Syrah 17% and Carignan at 13%. Mourvedre is also a player, and we know Mourvedre likes it hot. So in sites when it gets warm enough, it really shines. Key whites, a continuation of the Grenache, because we have Grenache Blanc and Grenache Gris and Macabeo. Another interesting point is that while the Languedoc has quite a lot of the international grape varieties like Chardonnay and Merlot and Cabernet Sauvignon and Sauvignon Blanc, not so much here in the Roussillon. That was never a trend that really took hold. So you maybe have some Merlot, some Chardonnay, but they are minor players. But for these wines, and also for wines that are single varietals like 100% Old Vine Carignan, they can be put under the appellations of IGP, Côte Catalan, or the catch-all Vin de France. As we mentioned, the Vin Doux Naturel used to be all the rage and has been very much on the decline. So at its heyday, 1882, the Roussillon had 76,000 hectares under vine. But today, this fact is from 2019, there's only about 20,000 hectares, about 27% of what it used to be. So quite the decline. Co-ops have dominated this region. They currently make up about 75% of all the production here, but that now is also in the decline. The smaller producers are taking hold. This is really fascinating what is happening. The land here is inexpensive. You know, this old rugged terrain. Rugged equals not easy to work. These are bush vines. They have to be worked by hand. They're on slopes, meaning you can't get the tractor up the hill, equals difficult and somewhat expensive. But you've got folks from the outside that see the potential and want to give it a go. And indeed, when we go visit these areas, we find German wine investors, folks from Brazil. It's just an equal opportunity for wine lovers to come to a region that has such potential and make some extraordinary wines. There is a big natural wine movement in this region because of the low disease pressure, because of these abandoned Old Vine Carignan. They're rediscovering these plots of abandoned vines, and these old vines that are 100 plus years old are making tremendously interesting wines. This region in France was also one of the last to adopt more modern winemaking techniques like temperature-controlled winemaking, the use of new oak. As always, money is an issue when it comes to making wine, and this region is lacking some of the funding, but this is also changing. To summarize this up, the Roussillon is an exciting wine region with its own identity, really unique wine styles, and tremendously welcoming and kind people. We definitely go and visit the little town of Collioure on one of our days for our wine trips. The only complaint people really have is that they didn't have enough time there to wander around, take photos. And there is a little hotel there with a coffee shop. And it used to be the Impressionist painters all stayed there, but they were broke, right? And so they paid for their stay in art. So the walls are lined with all these Impressionist paintings. When I bring in my tours there, I will go and get myself a little espresso and sit in that coffee shop and dream about what it was like when the Impressionists were all there, and it was their meeting place in this gorgeous little village. If you're interested in learning more about the 2026 wine trips this summer, I am doing a Zoom meeting on Wednesday, October 15th at 12 o'clock Central Time. The link for that will be in the newsletter. You can also go to the website at wineeducate.com/trips, and the link is right there. I really want everyone to learn about these trips and see if it's right for them. As you might have noticed, I'm doing Thursday episodes. I will try to do Tuesday bonus episodes when I can. I've got a pretty heavy teaching schedule at the moment. If I could do podcasts every day, I would. Because it is fun. Thank you very much for listening, and I will see you next time.